water was still warm when they found her. Clara Devo floated face down in the marble pool. Her white nightgown spread around her like a ghost. The bath was supposed to relax her. Instead, it became her grave. And Amara, the slave who prepared her bath that morning, was gone, vanished into the Louisiana swamp like smoke in the wind. This is the true story of a murder that became a legend. A 19-year-old woman who drowned her owner and disappeared into the most dangerous place in America. But here's what the history books won't tell you. Amara didn't kill Clara in a sudden moment of anger. She planned it for 3 whole weeks. She thought about every detail, every step, every risk, and the reason she did it, it's darker than you think. Louisiana, 1838. Magnolia Grove Plantation. Amara had been a slave for 7 years. She was purchased at a New Orleans auction when she was just 12 years old, sold like furniture to the Devo family. For 7 years, she served Clara Devo every single morning. The plantation owner's wife with red hair and green eyes that could look sweet one moment and cruel the next. Every morning was the same routine. Amara walked barefoot to the marble bathhouse. She carried soap that cost more than a human life. She heated water to the exact temperature Clara wanted. She scrubbed her mistress's skin until it turned pink. She poured oils that smelled like jasmine and roses, and she kept her mouth shut. But 3 weeks before Clara died, something changed. Something that would turn Amara from a victim into a killer. You see, Amara had a daughter. Her name was Nia. She was only 15 years old, and Clara's stepson, Roland, had started hunting her, following her, touching her. Everyone on the plantation knew what Roland did to young slave girls. He broke them, used them, threw them away. Amara was terrified, so she made a desperate choice. She begged Clara for help, got down on her knees, revealed family secrets, promised anything. Please, just protect my daughter. Clara smiled when Amara begged, and then she spoke words that sounded like hope. There's a new law coming from Charleston, Clara said, relaxing in her warm bath. Slaves who show special loyalty can earn privileges, protection for their families, freedom to keep their loved ones safe. It was music to Amara's ears, a way to save Nia. But Clara wanted something in return, not just Amara's work. She already owned that. Clara wanted Amara's body, her dignity, everything that was still hers in a world that had stolen almost everything else. So Amara gave it. For 3 weeks, she endured things that made her feel hollow inside. Every touch was a violation. Every moment was shame. But she did it because mothers would do anything to protect their children. Then one morning, Amara was cleaning Clara's bedroom, and she found a letter on the desk. It was from Clara's cousin in Charleston, the same cousin Clara had mentioned. But the letter didn't talk about any new laws. It was just gossip about parties and complaints about the summer heat. There was no law. There had never been any law. No protection coming for Nia. Clara had invented the entire story. She had lied to get what she wanted from Amara. Everything Amara had sacrificed, every violation of her body and soul, had been for nothing. The betrayal hit like a physical punch. Amara doubled over that mahogany desk, unable to breathe. The rage that filled her was unlike anything she had ever felt. A white-hot fury that burned away fear and caution. That night, Amara stopped being a victim and started planning a murder. She knew Clara's routine perfectly. 7 years of service had taught her everything. The bathhouse was separate from the main house, private, no witnesses, and Clara loved being alone in her morning bath. Amara needed 3 things. Opportunity. She had it every morning at 7. A method. Clara was strong and would fight back. And an escape route. The Louisiana Bayou stretched for miles, deadly but possible. She found her method in the main house's medicine cabinet. Laudanum, an opium medicine for pain. The right amount would make someone drowsy, slow, unable to fight. The morning arrived gray and heavy. Storm clouds gathered like a warning. Amara walked to the bathhouse with her usual basket, soap, towels, and hidden beneath the cotton, a small bottle of laudanum. Her hands were steady. Clara was already there, wrapped in expensive silk, humming happily. She was in a good mood. She even mentioned buying another young girl for Roland's entertainment, talked about it like buying a new horse. "I brought something special today, Miss Clara," Amara said, uncorking the laudanum, "a new oil from New Orleans. It helps you relax." Clara's eyes lit up. "How thoughtful, dear." The poison swirled into the bathwater, invisible. Within minutes, Clara's eyelids grew heavy. Her words started slurring. Her movements slowed down. "This is wonderful," Clara murmured. "Where did you get it?" From someone who understood suffering, Amara replied. Something in her voice made Clara's eyes snap open. For the first time ever, she really saw Amara, not as property, but as a woman with thoughts, feelings, and rage. Recognition flashed across Clara's face, then fear. She tried to push herself up from the water, but Amara was faster. Her hands pressed down on Clara's shoulders with strength earned from years of hard work and months of buried fury. "You lied to me," Amara whispered. There was never any protection for Nia. And then she pushed Clara under the water. The bath exploded with movement. Clara thrashed, clawed, fought like her life depended on it. Because it did. Her nails scratched across Amara's arms, leaving bloody marks that would scar forever. But the laudanum had slowed her down, made her clumsy, and Amara had something Clara didn't. Nothing left to lose. Bubbles rose to the surface. Fewer and fewer. Clara's movements grew weaker, slower, then stopped. Amara held her under for another full minute, making absolutely sure. When it was done, Amara felt something inside herself die too. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. But as she looked at Clara's body floating in the scented water, she felt no regret, only a cold satisfaction that justice had finally come to Magnolia Grove. Before we continue with what happened next, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Amara's story gets even more incredible from here. Amara worked quickly after that. She arranged Clara's body to look natural, like she had just slipped and drowned by accident. The laudanum couldn't be detected. The small bruises on her shoulders could be explained by the fall. She cleaned every trace of struggle from the marble walls. Then she placed her hand on Clara's forehead one last time, not in prayer, but in promise. A vow that Clara's death would mean something, that other women would be protected. And then Amara walked out of that bathhouse, back to the slave quarters, ready to play the role of her life. Because the hardest part wasn't the murder. It was surviving what came next. Amara had maybe 12 hours before they discovered the body. 12 hours before the screaming started. 12 hours to become someone else entirely. She walked back to the slave quarters like it was any other morning, her face calm, her breathing steady. But inside, her heart hammered like thunder. Clara Devo was dead, floating in that marble bathhouse. And Amara's hands had put her there. The other slaves were already awake, getting ready for another day of endless work. Amara moved among them normally. She helped cook breakfast over the fire. She braided hair. She laughed at someone's joke. Every movement was a performance. Every smile was a mask. But inside, she was memorizing faces, storing up memories, because she knew the truth. This was goodbye. Around noon, the screams began. A house slave had been sent to check on Clara, to find out why the mistress hadn't come to lunch. The woman's shrieks echoed across the entire plantation, high and terrible. Everyone came running. Field workers, kitchen staff, even Master Devo himself. Amara ran with them. She pushed through the crowd gathering outside the bathhouse. And when she saw Clara's body still floating in the water, she screamed. Loud and convincing. She fell to her knees. She wept. She shook. It was a performance of her life. Master Devo stood frozen beside the pool. His face had gone white as cotton. He stared at his dead wife like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. For the first time in his life, he looked powerless, like he'd realized he didn't control everything after all. The questioning started immediately. Every slave who worked near the bathhouse was pulled aside, their stories compared, their faces studied for any sign of guilt. When they got to Amara, she was ready. She told them she'd arrived for her usual duties that morning, found Clara already in the water, stepped outside to get fresh towels from the storage shed, came back to find her mistress floating face down. The story had enough truth in it to sound real, enough gaps to explain why she couldn't save Clara. Her voice shook at all the right moments. Tears rolled down her cheeks on command. They believed her, for now, but Amara knew suspicion would come eventually. It always did when something went wrong. The other slaves would remember how Clara had been calling Amara to the bathhouse at strange hours. They would whisper. Those whispers would reach Master Devo's ears. And then it would be over. She had maybe one night, two at most. That night, while the plantation grieved, Amara prepared to run. She couldn't take much. Just what could fit in a small cloth bundle. Her grandmother's hair ribbons, worn smooth from decades of use. A piece of iron her father had shaped into a cross before the fever took him. These things had no value to anyone else, but they carried the strength of her ancestors, and she would need that strength. The hardest part came just before dawn. Nia found her in the darkness. Her daughter's face was streaked with tears she'd been trying to hide. The two of them had always shared a connection deeper than words. Nia had sensed something was wrong. "You're leaving," Nia whispered. Not a question, a fact. Amara pulled her daughter close, breathed in the smell of her hair, memorized the weight of her in her arms. This might be the last time she ever held her child. "I have to go," Amara whispered back. "But I promise you, someday when it's safe, I'll come back for you." It might have been a lie, but it was a necessary one, a gift of hope when Amara had nothing else to give. Nia clung to her for a long moment, then stepped back with courage that ran in their family like blood. "I'll be strong," she said, and Amara knew she would be. That steel in her spine would carry her through whatever came next. It had to be enough, because it was all Amara could give her. She left Magnolia Grove Plantation as silent as a ghost, slipping past sleeping overseers, past guard dogs too tired to care, into the thick darkness before dawn. Behind her, the big house slept in ignorance. Ahead lay the Louisiana Bayou. 50 miles, the most dangerous swampland in America. Alligators that could swallow a person whole. Snakes that kill with a single bite. Quicksand that pulled you under while you screamed. But Amara had studied that swamp from a distance for years. Watched the way Spanish moss draped the cypress trees. Listened to the night sounds. She knew it was deadly. She also knew it was her only chance. The first step into the bayou was like entering another world. The water was warm around her ankles, thick with mud and secrets, alive with creatures she could sense but not see in the darkness. She was truly alone for the first time in her life, free from constant watching, free from control. The freedom was terrifying and beautiful at the same time, a gift she'd paid for with blood, and would keep paying for with every breath. But she was free, and Clara Devo was dead. For now, that was enough. Within 24 hours, wanted posters covered every town in Louisiana. Amara's face, her description, and underneath, in bold letters, $500 reward. Dead or alive. That was more money than most people saw in 5 years. Enough to make every bounty hunter in the state start searching. Enough to make even good people consider betrayal. The first 3 days in the bayou nearly killed her. The heat was unbearable, trapped under the thick canopy of trees and bouncing off the water until the air itself felt like fire. Mosquitoes swarmed in clouds so thick they blocked out the sun. Her skin bloomed with red welts that burned and itched. The water she brought from the plantation ran out fast, and the swamp water tasted foul, full of things that could make her sick or kill her. But the worst part was the sounds. At night, the bayou came alive. Alligators bellowed in the darkness. Things splashed in the water nearby. Branches cracked. Snakes rustled through leaves overhead. Every sound could be death creeping closer. Amara learned fast. She tested water depth with a long stick before each step. She learned to tell the difference between a floating log and a sleeping alligator. She moved quietly enough to avoid disturbing the creatures that ruled this place. On her 4th day, Exhausted and starving, she heard voices. Men, getting closer. Amara dove into a hollow cypress tree. The opening was barely big enough for her body. She squeezed inside, pressing herself against the rotting wood, trying not to breathe. The bounty hunters passed within 10 feet of her hiding spot. "That slave girl gotta be dead by now," one man said. His voice was rough and tired. "Ain't nobody survived for days in this swamp without knowing it. Dead or alive, we still get paid," another replied. "They say she murdered Clara Devo in her own bathhouse. Drowned her like a dog. $500 for the girl who did that. I heard she was Clara's favorite. Had special privileges. Why would she kill her own mistress? Who knows why they do anything? But I'll tell you what, if we find her, I hope she's still breathing. I got some questions I'd like to ask before we turn her in." The men laughed, dark and mean. Amara stayed frozen in that tree trunk long after their voices faded. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure they could hear it. But they kept walking, kept searching, never looked inside the hollow tree where their prize was hiding. When silence returned, Amara finally breathed. She'd survived. Barely. But something else had happened during those 4 days. Something she didn't know yet. Back in the slave quarters of Louisiana, people were whispering her name, telling stories. Some said they'd seen her walking on the Bayou water at night, her figure glowing with ghostly light. Others claimed she'd become a spirit of vengeance, coming back to punish cruel masters and mistresses. The legend of Amara was growing, spreading from plantation to plantation like wildfire. She wasn't just a runaway anymore. She was becoming something bigger. A symbol, a ghost story, a hope. But Amara didn't know any of this yet. She only knew she was starving, delirious from dehydration, ready to give up. And that's when she heard it, singing, low and melodious, rising from somewhere deep in the swamp. Human voices in harmony with the natural sounds of the bayou. At first she thought her mind was playing tricks. That fever and hunger had finally broken her brain. But the singing got louder, clearer. Amara followed the sound. The singing led Amara to the thickest part of the swamp she'd seen yet. Tangled mangrove roots reached out like fingers trying to grab her. Spanish moss hung, so low it brushed her face. But the voices kept calling, getting closer. Then the trees opened up. Amara stood at the edge of a hidden lake. The water was mirror smooth, reflecting the sky like black glass. And on the far shore, impossible but real, she saw structures built into the living trees themselves. Platforms, walkways. They seemed to grow naturally from the cypress trunks. Smoke rose from carefully hidden fires. People moved between the buildings with easy confidence. The confidence of people who belonged here. She'd found them. The Maroons. Escaped slaves who built freedom in the heart of the swamp. The singing stopped suddenly. Before Amara could move, she was surrounded. Men and women appeared from the swamp like they'd materialized from thin air. They carried weapons made from plantation tools and swamp materials. Sharpened hoes, clubs, knives. But their faces weren't hostile, just careful, watchful. A woman stepped forward from the group. She looked about 40 years old, with a colorful headscarf wrapped around her hair and dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. Everything about her said leader, authority, someone used to making life and death decisions. She studied Amara for a long moment, taking in her torn clothes, her mosquito-bitten skin, her exhausted, desperate face. "You running from something or running to something?" the woman finally asked. Her voice was calm but powerful. Amara knew her answer mattered, that these people would either welcome her or send her back to die in the swamp. "Both," she said honestly. Something flickered in the woman's eyes. Respect, maybe, or understanding. She nodded once and gestured for the others to lower their weapons. "I'm Mama Celeste," she said, "and you look like someone with a story worth hearing." The community that welcomed Amara was unlike anything she'd imagined possible. Nearly 200 former slaves lived here. They'd been gathering for decades, creating a society that mixed African traditions with practical swamp survival. They grew rice in flooded fields that looked like natural wetland. raised chickens and pigs on platforms above the water, harvested fish and game from the bayou's abundance. Most importantly, they created a place where black people could live as free men and women, making their own choices, following their own customs. No overseers, no whips, no masters. Amara's integration started slowly. She proved her worth by sharing medical knowledge her grandmother had taught her, treating infections and fevers with herbs that grew wild in the swamp. Her ability to read and write, rare among escaped slaves, made her valuable for keeping records and writing letters to other maroon communities scattered throughout Louisiana. Most valuable of all was the information she brought. News of plantation life, slave conditions, guard routines, information that helped the community make smart decisions about raids and rescues. But even in this sanctuary, Amara couldn't escape what she'd done. Clara's death haunted her dreams. She'd wake up gasping, feeling phantom water on her hands. The other community members had all committed the crime of escaping slavery, but few had killed a white person doing it. That made Amara especially dangerous in the eyes of the authorities. Someone worth hunting even in the treacherous depths of the bayou. Mama Celeste noticed Amara's nightmares, her jumpy reactions to sudden sounds. One evening, she sat beside Amara on a platform overlooking the dark water. "Guilt will eat you alive if you let it," Mama Celeste said quietly. "What you did, was it justice or murder?" "Both," Amara whispered. The same answer she'd given when she arrived. "Then carry both. Use the weight to make you stronger, not to drown you." The search parties came within weeks. Groups of armed men with trained dogs who crashed through the swamp like a plague. But the community had warning systems in place. Networks of sentries and signals that could alert them hours before danger arrived. When the alarm sounded, the entire settlement dispersed like smoke. Buildings emptied. People melted into hiding places prepared for exactly these emergencies. Amara learned these routines quickly. Her survival depended on becoming invisible at a moment's notice. And Mama Celeste was watching her, seeing something in Amara that others didn't. Leadership potential, strategic thinking, the kind of person who could help the community do more than just survive. "You know plantations from the inside," Mama Celeste said one day. "Their routines, their weaknesses. That knowledge is a weapon. Are you willing to use it?" Amara thought about Nia, still trapped at Magnolia Grove, still in danger from Roland Devo. "Yes," she said, "I'm willing." 6 months after drowning her mistress, Amara was about to go back to the plantations, not as a slave, but as something far more dangerous, a liberator. 6 months after drowning her mistress, Amara was about to do something even more dangerous. Go back to the plantations. The planning took weeks. Mama Celeste gathered the best fighters. Amara drew maps from memory, guard positions, patrol schedules, weak points in the fences. Every detail mattered. One mistake could get everyone killed. The target was a small plantation 15 miles north. 40 slaves. 6 guards. Amara knew the layout because she'd visited there once with the Devo family. They left on a moonless night. 5 boats gliding silently through black water. Amara's heart hammered the entire journey. She was going back to the world that had enslaved her. But this time, she was armed. The raid lasted 12 minutes. The singing led Amara through the thickest part of the swamp she'd seen yet. Tangled mangrove roots reached out like fingers trying to grab her. Spanish moss hung, so low it brushed her face. But the voices kept calling, getting closer. Then the trees opened up. Amara stood at the edge of a hidden lake. The water was mirror smooth, reflecting the sky like black glass. And on the far shore, impossible but real, she saw structures built into the living trees themselves. Platforms, walkways. They seemed to grow naturally from the cypress trunks. Smoke rose from carefully hidden fires. People moved between the buildings with easy confidence. The confidence of people who belonged here. She'd found them, the Maroons, escaped slaves who built freedom in the heart of the swamp. The singing stopped suddenly. Before Amara could move, she was surrounded. Men and women appeared from the swamp like they'd materialized from thin air. They carried weapons made from plantation tools and swamp materials. Sharpened hoes, clubs, knives, but their faces weren't hostile, just careful, watchful. A woman stepped forward from the group. She looked about 40 years old, with a colorful headscarf wrapped around her hair and dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. Everything about her said leader, authority, someone used to making life and death decisions. She studied Amara for a long moment, taking in her torn clothes, her mosquito-bitten skin, her exhausted, desperate face. You running from something or running to something? The woman finally asked. Her voice was calm but powerful. Amara knew her answer mattered, that these people would either welcome her or send her back to die in the swamp. Both, she said honestly. Something flickered in the woman's eyes. Respect, maybe, or understanding. She nodded once and gestured for the others to lower their weapons. I'm Mama Celeste, she said, and you look like someone with a story worth hearing. The community that welcomed Amara was unlike anything she'd imagined possible. Nearly 200 former slaves lived here. They'd been gathering for decades, creating a society that mixed African traditions with practical swamp survival. They grew rice in flooded fields that looked like natural wetland, raised chickens and pigs on platforms above the water, harvested fish and game from the bayou's abundance. Most importantly, they created a place where black people could live as free men and women, making their own choices, following their own customs. No overseers, no whips, no masters. Amara's integration started slowly. She proved her worth by sharing medical knowledge her grandmother had taught her, treating infections and fevers with herbs that grew wild in the swamp. Her ability to read and write, rare among escaped slaves, made her valuable for keeping records and writing letters to other maroon communities scattered throughout Louisiana. Most valuable of all was the information she brought. News of plantation life, slave conditions, guard routines, information that helped the community make smart decisions about raids and rescues. But even in this sanctuary, Amara couldn't escape what she'd done. Clara's death haunted her dreams. She'd wake up gasping, feeling phantom water on her hands. The other community members had all committed the crime of escaping slavery, but few had killed a white person doing it. That made Amara especially dangerous in the eyes of the authorities. Someone worth hunting even in the treacherous depths of the bayou. Mama Celeste noticed Amara's nightmares, her jumpy reactions to sudden sounds. One evening, she sat beside Amara on a platform overlooking the dark water. Guilt will eat you alive if you let it. Mama Celeste said quietly, what you did, was it justice or murder? Both, Amara whispered. The same answer she'd given when she arrived. Then carry both. Use the weight to make you stronger, not to drown you. The search parties came within weeks. Groups of armed men with trained dogs who crashed through the swamp like a plague. But the community had warning systems in place. Networks of sentries and signals that could alert them hours before danger arrived. When the alarm sounded, the entire settlement dispersed like smoke. Buildings emptied. People melted into hiding places prepared for exactly these emergencies. Amara learned these routines quickly. Her survival depended on becoming invisible at a moment's notice. And Mama Celeste was watching her, seeing something in Amara that others didn't. Leadership potential, strategic thinking, the kind of person who could help the community do more than just survive. You know plantations from the inside. Mama Celeste said one day, their routines, their weaknesses, that knowledge is a weapon. Are you willing to use it? Amara thought about Nia, still trapped at Magnolia Grove, still in danger from Roland Devo. Yes, she said, I'm willing. 6 months after drowning her mistress, Amara was about to go back to the plantations, not as a slave, but as something far more dangerous, a liberator. 6 months after drowning her mistress, Amara was about to do something even more dangerous. Go back to the plantations. The planning took weeks. Mama Celeste gathered the best fighters. Amara drew maps from memory, guard positions, patrol schedules, weak points in the fences. Every detail mattered. One mistake could get everyone killed. The target was a small plantation 15 miles north. 40 slaves. 6 guards. Amara knew the layout because she'd visited there once with the Devo family. They left on a moonless night. 5 boats gliding silently through black water. Amara's heart hammered the entire journey. She was going back to the world that had enslaved her, but this time she was armed. The raid lasted 12 minutes. They moved fast and silent, disabled the guards before they could sound alarms, broke open the slave quarters, whispered urgent instructions. Follow us. Stay quiet. Freedom is waiting. Some slaves were too afraid to move, too beaten down to believe freedom was real. But others ran. 12 people who'd been property at sunset were free by midnight. During the escape, one woman recognized Amara. Her eyes went wide. "You're her," she whispered. "The one who drowned Clara Devo. They say you walk on water. That you're a ghost come back to save us." Amara shook her head. "I'm no ghost. Just someone who got tired of being property." But the woman looked at her like she was seeing something holy. The legend was growing, and Amara was just getting started. The raids continued for months. Small plantations, careful targets, dozens of slaves freed and brought to safety in the Bayou. Amara's name spread like wildfire through Louisiana, whispered in slave quarters, feared in plantation houses. The woman who'd killed her mistress and become a liberator. Then came the raid near Baton Rouge. It was supposed to be routine. 15 slaves freed, clean escape. Everything went according to plan. But among the rescued was a young woman who'd been sold from Magnolia Grove just months earlier. She recognized Amara immediately. "I need to tell you something," the woman said as they traveled back through the swamp. Her voice was shaking. "About your daughter." Amara's blood went cold. "Nia? What about Nia?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. She's gone." The world stopped moving. "Roland Devo," the woman continued. "He went after her one night. She fought back, and he beat her. She didn't survive." Amara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything she'd done, the murder, the escape, the sacrifice, had been to protect Nia, and it had all been for nothing. The protection she'd traded her body and soul for had never existed. Clara's lies had cost Amara everything, and now they'd cost Nia her life. For 3 weeks, Amara disappeared into the deepest parts of the swamp, away from the community, away from everyone. Some thought grief had killed her. They were wrong. She was being transformed. Grief was turning into something else. Something harder, colder, more dangerous. Pure rage. For 3 weeks, Amara vanished into the darkest parts of the swamp, where even brave Maroons feared to go, where cypress trees grew so thick that sunlight never touched the ground. Some thought she died, drowned herself in grief. Mama Celeste found her on the 21st day, sitting on a fallen log, staring at black water. Amara's eyes were different now, harder, like something inside had burned away, leaving only steel. "Your daughter's death is now in your hands," Mama Celeste said. "That blood belongs to Roland Devo, to the system that made her a victim." "It wasn't enough," Amara whispered. "Nothing I did was enough. Because the system is designed so nothing we do is ever enough." Mama Celeste's voice was firm but gentle. "So now you choose. Let grief destroy you, or transform that pain into something powerful. Make sure other daughters have a better chance than Nia did." During those 3 weeks alone, Amara had talked to the spirits, the way her grandmother taught her. Water spirits, wind spirits, the old gods her family carried from Africa. She'd asked for strength, for permission to become something more than human, something closer to the ghost slaves already thought she was. When Amara returned, everyone noticed a change. She moved differently. Cold certainty burned in her eyes. She threw herself into planning with frightening intensity. The raids became bolder, more sophisticated, hitting targets others considered impossible. The legends grew darker. Plantation owners whispered about a ghost who appeared in the night, a demon who stole their slaves and vanished like smoke. One evening, Amara approached Mama Celeste with a new plan. "What if we hit 7 plantations, all on the same night, coordinated, simultaneous?" Mama Celeste's eyes widened. "That's dangerous." "Yes, but But if it works, we free hundreds in one night, including everyone at Magnolia Grove. Then let's make history. November 1841. 3 years after Clara Devo drowned in her marble bathhouse. 7 plantations. One night, one woman's vengeance becoming revolution. The planning took months. Messages carried to the Bayou network to coordinate timing and targets. Weapons sharpened. Boats prepared. Intelligence gathered about guard routines and defenses. Amara's target was personal. Magnolia Grove, where it all began. They launched at midnight under a moonless sky. 7 groups. 7 boats, all moving through the darkness like ghosts. Amara's team hit Magnolia Grove at exactly 2 in the morning. Guards were overwhelmed before they could sound alarms. Slave quarters unlocked. Whispered urgently, "Freedom is waiting. Come now." Amara walked to the plantation like a spirit returned from the dead. Past the big house where she'd served for 7 years. Past the quarters where she'd said goodbye to Nia. And finally, to the marble bathhouse. She stood where Clara had died, where everything changed. The pool was empty now, drained and abandoned. But Amara could still see it, still feel Clara's shoulders beneath her hands. Master Devo found her there, old now, broken by years of fear. He stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. "You," he whispered. "Me," Amara replied, "and I'm taking everyone you think you own." By dawn, over 200 slaves had been freed. 7 plantations struck simultaneously. Louisiana woke up to chaos. But the authorities' response would be swift and brutal. And Amara knew her time was running out. The authorities' response was brutal. Burn the bayou. Kill every Maroon. Leave no survivors. Within days, 300 soldiers swept to the swampland. They used fire and explosives to destroy hiding places that had sheltered escapees for generations. Settlement after settlement fell. Refugees arrived at Amara's community with horror stories, massacres, families torn apart, children killed. The network that took decades to build was collapsing in weeks. "Mama," Celeste called an emergency council. "We can't win this fight, not with force." Amara sat silent, thinking, then she spoke words that shocked everyone. "I'll surrender, in exchange for amnesty for the community." The room exploded with protest, but Amara raised her hand. "I'm the one they want, my face on the posters, my name in their nightmares. If I give myself up, maybe they'll leave you alone." "They'll kill you," Mama Celeste said. "I know, but my death can save hundreds. That's worth it." The negotiation took days. Messages passed through intermediaries. Amara's terms were simple. Her life for community safety. The authorities couldn't resist. Capturing the legendary Amara was too tempting. The surrender happened on a sacred island in the middle of the bayou. Amara arrived alone, wearing simple clothes. Her head held high. As the manacles closed around her wrists, she looked back toward the dark water, where her people remained hidden. She'd freed hundreds. Now she would save them by giving up her freedom forever. The legend would live on. The trial of Amara became the most famous in Louisiana history. Crowds packed the courtroom. The prosecution called her a dangerous criminal who threatened civilized society. The defense tried to paint her as a victim driven to desperation. Amara said nothing, refused to play either role. She sat silent and dignified while they argued about her life. When Master Devo testified, his voice shook with rage and grief. But Amara looked him in the eye without flinching. The verdict was never in doubt. Death by hanging. On execution morning, Amara walked to the town square with her head high. The crowd was mixed. Curious onlookers, vengeful plantation owners, and quietly supportive faces from the slave quarters and freedmen communities. As the rope was placed around her neck, Amara spoke her final words. "Freedom isn't something others give or take away. It lives in the heart of every person who refuses to accept that chains are natural. Kill me if you must, but you cannot kill the idea that every human being deserves to choose their own path." The lever fell, but Amara's story didn't end there. Within hours, sightings began. Slaves claimed to see her walking the bayou at night, glowing with inner light. Escape attempts surged across Louisiana. Her tactics spread to other resistance movements. The Maroon community survived. Master Devo died within a year. Magnolia Grove fell to ruin, the marble bathhouse crumbling into the earth. Today, the bayou remains a place of pilgrimage, and in the Spanish moss and dark water, some say Amara still walks, watching, protecting, free forever. They tried to erase Amara from history, but we just brought her back. If you believe these stories matter, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the only way history gets rewritten is if we refuse to forget. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.